Rick Thompson entered Amir's convenience store, his police badge prominently displayed. He walked through the aisles, eyes scanning the shelves with disdain. "Quite a selection you've got here," he remarked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Though I'm not sure about the quality. Might need to improve things around here." Amir stood behind the counter, his face a mask of calm. "Everything here meets health and safety standards, Officer Thompson," he replied evenly. But he couldn't ignore the threatening look in Thompson's eyes. This wasn't a routine check, something more sinister was brewing. Thompson leaned in close, his voice low. "Listen, Amir, I've been thinking. There might be a way to make sure your little operation here stays trouble-free. For a price, of course." He smirked, clearly enjoying the power he held. Amir's mind raced. He'd heard whispers of corrupt officers in the neighborhood, but never thought he'd face one directly. "I'm not sure I understand, officer," he said carefully, buying time as he considered his options. "Don't play dumb," Thompson snapped. $500 a week, and I'll make sure no one looks too closely at your permits, your stock, or anything else that might cause problems. Consider it insurance." Amir felt a mix of anger and fear rising in his chest. He knew he couldn't give in to this extortion, but confronting Thompson directly could be dangerous. He needed a plan, and fast. I'll need some time to think about it," Amir managed to say, his voice steadier than he felt. Thompson's eyes narrowed. "Don't take too long. I'd hate to see anything happen to this nice little store of yours." With a final menacing glance around the shop, he sauntered out, leaving Amir alone with his thoughts and a growing determination to fight back. Amir sat in a quiet corner of a nearby cafe, his hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee. His eyes darted nervously to the door as a man in a plain suit entered and made his way to the table. "Mr. Hassan," the man asked quietly. Amir nodded, and the man took a seat across from him. "I'm Agent Carter from Internal Affairs," the man said, showing his badge discreetly. "You said you had information about police corruption in your community?" Amir leaned forward, his voice low but urgent. "It's Officer Rick Thompson. He came to my store yesterday, demanding protection money. He threatened my business if I don't pay." Carter's expression hardened. "We've had suspicions about Thompson for a while, but no solid evidence. Your testimony could be crucial." Amir hesitated, weighing the risks. "What exactly would I need to do?" "We need recordings, Mr. Hassan. Concrete proof of Thompson's extortion," Carter explained. "It's dangerous, I won't lie, but it could help us clean up the department and protect your community." Amir thought of his family, his neighbors, all the immigrants struggling to build a life here. "I'll do it," he said firmly. "Whatever it takes to stop this." Carter nodded, impressed by Amir's courage. "We'll provide you with recording equipment and backup. But you'll need to get Thompson to incriminate himself clearly." As they finalized the details of their plan, Amir felt a mix of determination and fear. He was stepping into a dangerous game, but he knew it was necessary to protect everything he'd worked for. A week later, Thompson barged into Amir's store, his face twisted with impatience. "Time's up, Amir. Where's my money?" he growled, glancing around to ensure they were alone. Amir's heart raced, but he forced a nervous smile. "Officer Thompson, I've been thinking about your offer. But perhaps we could discuss this somewhere more private?" Thompson's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Why? Got something to hide?" No, Amir said quickly. "It's just how customers might come in. We wouldn't want any misunderstandings, right?" After a moment, Thompson nodded. "Fine. Out back 5 minutes. Don't keep me waiting." As Thompson left, Amir discreetly activated the recording device hidden in his pocket. His palms were sweaty, but he steeled himself for what was to come. Behind the store, Thompson wasted no time. $500 a week starting now, or things get ugly for you and your little shop. Amir played his part, feigning reluctance. "That's a lot of money. How do I know you'll keep your word?" Thompson sneered. "You don't have a choice. Pay up, or I'll make sure every cop in this precinct finds a reason to shut you down. Health violations, expired permits. We can be very creative. And if I pay, you'll leave me alone." Amir pressed, ensuring every word was captured clearly. "As long as the money keeps coming, you've got nothing to worry about. Miss a payment, though." Thompson left the thread hanging. Amir nodded, handing over an envelope. "Here's the first payment. I hope I can trust you." Thompson pocketed the cash with a smirk. "Smart choice." See? We understand each other now. As Thompson walked away, Amir let out a shaky breath. The confrontation was over, but he knew this was just the beginning of a dangerous game. In a dimly lit interrogation room, Amir sat across from Agent Carter and his team. The atmosphere was tense as they played back the recording of Thompson's extortion. "You've got some balls, Mr. Hassan," Carter said, shaking his head in disbelief. "This is exactly what we needed." Amir leaned forward, his voice steady. "It's not just about me. Thompson's been terrorizing our whole community. Immigrant-owned businesses are easy targets. Many are too afraid to speak up." He went on to share stories he'd heard. A halal butcher shop forced to pay inspection fees, a family-run laundromat threatened with closure, all victims of Thompson's greed. "This corruption, it's like a cancer," Amir explained. "It eats away at people's trust, their hope. How can we believe in justice when those meant to protect us are the ones we fear most?" Carter nodded grimly. "Your testimony, combined with this recording, gives us enough to move on Thompson. But I won't lie to you, things might get worse before they get better." "Are you prepared for that?" Amir thought of his family, his neighbors, the future he wanted for his children. "I have to be," he said firmly. "Someone has to take a stand." As the meeting concluded, Carter clasped Amir's shoulder. "What you're doing here, Mr. Hassan, it's true heroism. But be careful. Thompson won't go down without a fight." Leaving the station, Amir felt a mix of pride and apprehension. He'd taken a crucial step, but the battle was far from over. The weight of his community's future rested heavily on his shoulders as he stepped out into the night, more determined than ever to see this through. Thompson's instincts were on high alert. Something about Amir's recent behavior didn't sit right with him. After some digging, he uncovered Amir's connection to internal affairs. One evening, as Amir was closing up shop, Thompson appeared from the shadows. Well, looks like we've got a rat in the neighborhood," he snarled, his hand resting ominously on his holstered gun. Amir's heart raced, but he kept his composure. "I don't know what you're talking about, Officer Thompson." Thompson stepped closer, his voice low and menacing. "Don't play dumb with me. I know you've been talking to I. Did you really think you could outsmart me?" Amir stood his ground, though his palms were sweating. "I'm just trying to run my business, Thompson. Nothing more." "You've made a big mistake, Amir," Thompson hissed. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I've got friends in high places, and we take care of our own." The threat hung heavy in air. Amir knew he was in real danger now, but he couldn't back down. "Are you threatening me, officer? Because that would be a serious violation of your oath." Thompson's eyes flashed with anger. "Watch your back, Amir. Accidents happen all the time in this neighborhood. It would be a shame if something happened to your store or your family." As Thompson stormed off, Amir leaned against the wall, his heart pounding. The situation had escalated beyond what he'd imagined. He needed to act fast to protect himself and his loved ones, but he was more determined than ever to see this through. The fight against corruption had become personal, and there was no turning back now. Amir stood at the front of the community center, facing a room full of his neighbors. His voice trembled slightly as he began, "I've called this meeting because we need to talk about the corruption that's poisoning our neighborhood." At first, the room was quiet, filled with nervous glances. Amir pressed on, sharing his experiences with Thompson and the extortion he'd faced. Slowly, others began to speak up, sharing similar stories of intimidation and fear. "We can't let this continue," Amir urged. "If we stand together, we can make a change. We deserve to feel safe in our own community." An elderly woman stood up, her voice shaky but determined. "Amir's right. I've been silent for too long. Officer Thompson threatened to shut down my bakery last month. We must do something." As more people shared their stories, a sense of unity began to grow. By the end of the meeting, a plan was forming. They would document every instance of corruption, support each other, and work with internal affairs to bring evidence against Thompson and his allies. Unbeknownst to the group, Thompson was watching from across the street, his face contorted with rage. He saw the crowd rallying around Amir, saw the threat to his power growing. "This ends now," he muttered, pulling out his phone. He dialed a number, speaking in a low, urgent tone. "We've got a problem. That shopkeeper, Amir. He's turning the whole neighborhood against us. We need to shut him up permanently." As the call ended, Thompson's eyes fixed on Amir, who was now surrounded by supportive neighbors. The battle lines were drawn, and Thompson was prepared to go to any lengths to maintain his corrupt empire. Rain poured down as Thompson pushed open the door to Amir's store, his face a mask of fury. But instead of finding Amir alone, he was met with a group of determined faces. Amir stood at the center, flanked by several community members. "What's this? A little welcoming committee?" Thompson sneered, his hand instinctively moving towards his holster. Amir stepped forward, his voice steady. "It's over, Thompson. We're not afraid anymore. The whole community is watching now." Thompson's eyes darted around, realizing he was outnumbered. His face twisted with rage. "You think this changes anything? You have no idea what you're up against." In a flash, Thompson drew his weapon, pointing it at Amir. Gasps filled the room, but no one moved. "Back off, all of you," Thompson shouted. But the group held firm. An elderly man spoke up. "Put the gun down, officer. There are too many witnesses here." Tension crackled in the air as Thompson's hand shook, his finger on the trigger. For a moment, it seemed he might actually fire. Then, slowly, he lowered the weapon. "This isn't over," Thompson growled, backing towards the door. "You'll regret this, Amir. All of you will." As Thompson disappeared into the rainy night, a collective sigh of relief filled the store. Amir turned to the group, his heart pounding. "Thank you, all of you. But he's right about one thing. This isn't over. We need to be prepared for what comes next." The group nodded solemnly, understanding that their fight against corruption had just entered a new, more dangerous phase. As they began to discuss their next steps, Amir couldn't shake the feeling that Thompson's threat was far from empty. The real battle was just beginning. In the days following the confrontation, the internal affairs investigation into Thompson gained momentum. Agent Carter and his team worked tirelessly, following leads and gathering testimonies from emboldened community members. Amir, now more confident in his role as a community leader, organized nightly vigils to raise awareness about police corruption. The local park became a gathering spot for residents sharing stories and strategizing. During one such vigil, Amir addressed the crowd. "Our unity is our strength. We must continue to document every instance of corruption and support each other." As the meeting dispersed, a man Amir recognized as a former classmate approached him cautiously. "Amir, can we talk privately?" he asked, glancing nervously around. In a quiet corner, the man David spoke in hushed tones. "I used to work at the precinct as a civilian employee. Thompson isn't the only dirty cop. There's a whole network of them." Amir's eyes widened. "Are you sure about this, David?" David nodded grimly. "I've seen things, heard conversations. I was too scared to speak up before, but seeing what you're doing, I want to help." This new information both excited and worried Amir. It could be the key to dismantling the entire corrupt system, but also meant the danger was far greater than he'd initially thought. "We need to take this to internal affairs," Amir said. "But we have to be careful. Can you write down everything, you know?" As David agreed, Amir felt a mix of hope and apprehension. The scope of their fight had just expanded significantly, and he knew the risks were higher than ever. But with the community behind him and this new evidence, Amir was determined to see this through to the end, no matter the cost. Amir sat in a dimly lit room with Agent Carter and his team, poring over maps and documents. The plan to catch Thompson and his corrupt network was taking shape. "We'll set up a sting operation," Carter explained. "Amir, you'll be the bait. We'll have you arrange a meeting with Thompson, ostensibly to pay him off. But this time, we'll be ready." Amir nodded, his face set with determination. "I'm ready. Whatever it takes to end this." As they finalized the details, Amir's phone buzzed. An anonymous text message read, "Back off now, or your family pays." His hand shook as he showed it to Carter. Carter's face darkened. "They're getting desperate. We'll assign protection to your family immediately." Over the next few days, the threats escalated. Amir found his car vandalized, windows smashed. Graffiti appeared on his storefront, snitch in angry red letters. Despite the intimidation, the community rallied around Amir. Neighbors took turns keeping watch over his store. Local businesses offered support, refusing to be cowed by the corrupt officers. During a tense community meeting, Amir addressed the growing fear. "I know you're scared. I am too. But if we give in now, they win. We have to stand strong, just a little longer." An elderly woman stood up, her voice quavering but resolute. "We're with you, Amir. All the way." As the day of the sting operation approached, Amir felt the weight of his community's hopes on his shoulders. He knew the risks were enormous, but the chance to finally bring justice to their neighborhood drove him forward. That night, as he prepared for bed, Amir paused to look at a photo of his family. "It's for them," he whispered to himself. "For all of us." With a deep breath, he steeled himself for the dangerous day ahead. The day of the sting operation arrived. Amir's store was wired with hidden cameras and microphones, and undercover agents were strategically positioned nearby. Amir's heart raced as he waited for Thompson to arrive. The bell above the door jingled, and Thompson swaggered in. "Well, Amir, I hope you've come to your senses," he sneered. Amir played his part perfectly. "I can't fight you anymore, Thompson." "Here's the money you asked for," he said, sliding an envelope across the counter. Thompson grinned, reaching for the cash. "Smart move. See, I told you we could understand each other." At that moment, Amir pressed a hidden button, signaling the team. "Actually, Thompson, I think it's you who doesn't understand. This ends now." Confusion flashed across Thompson's face, quickly replaced by anger. He lunged for Amir, but before he could reach him, the store filled with agents. "NYPD. Freeze." Agent Carter shouted, his badge held high. Thompson reached for his gun, but thought better of it when he saw he was surrounded. "You can't do this to me," he snarled. "I'm a cop." Amir stepped forward, holding up his phone. "Not anymore. I've recorded every threat, every bribe. It's over, Thompson." As Thompson was handcuffed and led away, the community gathered outside erupted in cheers. Amir emerged from the store to a hero's welcome, hugged and patted on the back by his neighbors. In the days that followed, the full extent of the corruption was revealed. Several other officers were arrested, and a major cleanup of the precinct began. At a community celebration, Amir addressed the crowd. "This victory belongs to all of us. We stood together against injustice, and we won. But our work isn't done. We must remain vigilant, always ready to stand up for what's right." As he looked out at the faces of his neighbors, Amir felt a profound sense of pride and hope. They had faced a seemingly insurmountable challenge and emerged stronger. The future, once uncertain, now seemed bright with possibility.